So I want to kind of walk through them a little bit in ways that you can think about them and use them for your writing project one. How to develop the rhetorical appeals analysis process to kind of broaden the scope so it's easier to kind of see or connect with what the rhetorical appeals are. Now, when we're thinking about the rhetorical appeals, we think very much about this being a very important tradition that comes from a very famous individual. So specifically Aristotle, we're thinking of this in terms of the Platonic methods with Plato, but we want to kind of break it down into something that's even more simple. It's about trust. And ethos is very much about how much we can trust a particular individual. So ethos, of course, is about ethics. So we think about the roots of those Greek and Latin terms. So ethos is very much what we equate to ethics. It's what do we consider just and right, true, right? So it's also about expertise. So we often see experts as witnesses in Senate hearings or in trials. We also trust the experts that they have all the facts, they have that knowledge, so we can trust what they have to say. Ethos also has a lot to do with power and authority. So we want the people that are our leaders to be someone that we can trust. So a good leader, someone who has good authority, are people that we trust. And if that trust is broken, then that ethos goes completely away. We also think about terms of fame, influence, reputation. Again, this is why scandal is so kind of attractive to everybody, because what it essentially is doing is that it's showing us that we can't trust this person anymore. Once we can't trust them, they've lost that sense of ethos. So what we're also thinking about in terms of ethos in rhetorical appeals is, can we trust this person? Is what they're saying credible? So it's not just about the people that you're getting your information from, but those are your sources. So you want to have trustworthy sources. You want to have some sort of credibility, and this can go back to people's expertise. It can go back to their power. Have they set an ethical example for the treatment of other people? So this is kind of thinking about the persona as well as their displayed behaviors being combined, being something that is leading by example. It's essentially, who can we believe in? Ethos very much has a lot to do with the person information is coming from, the person is representing an idea, the person is representing an organization. Can we trust them? Next, when we want to talk about logos, logos is very much about the facts and using the facts in a way that is responsible. So logos fails when we don't use information responsibly, essentially. So you're kind of seeing the overlap between the rhetorical appeals, and that's something that a lot of people forget, is that there is overlap. The same action, the same set of words that we would use in ethos, or the same set of information that we might use for ethos. Like a researcher who is an expert in their field has ethos, but they're presenting us facts and research that are logos. So with that, we have logic and data and testable facts. So anything that's proven by scientific method, that's a testable fact. So that means research and experimentation are a part of that. That means comparison, so that's, compare and contrast, or even metaphorical comparisons. These are logos because they're meant to help us kind of see the truth of something. So this also includes statistics, evidence, but also shown through consistency. So this is kind of looking at patterns within data, patterns within behaviors, things that we can test over and over again and still come to the same results. So this means we're looking at big T versus little t truths. Now what I mean by this is big T truths are truths that are shared by many, many people in terms of, we have tested this. This is something that we have found to be true over a vast number of people. Little t truths are personal truths. They're ones that, people's experience, we can't invalidate those things. We can't take that away from those people. These are the things they believe in. And we'll get a little bit more into that idea of things that people believe in with pathos. So you want to kind of think of big T truths are the things that are testable. They're provable. And that's what logos at its core is. It's the things that we can prove. A good example of how big T versus little t truths can be challenged in the world is thinking about the anti-vaccine movement. So we thought we had a big T truth. So this researcher published their research in The Lancet, which is a very famous, very reputable medical journal that's been around for a very, very long time. So again, there's that ethos. But they published their data in this particular journal, and what it said is that vaccines cause autism, or at least that's the way people interpreted it, because it fit within their little t truth. But what was proven over and over again when people tried to repeat the testing in different contexts with different features, or even when they tried to repeat the same test, they couldn't get the same results. And this is how we kind of found out that the article that all of the anti-vaccine movement is based on was actually falsified. It was a complete untruth, essentially. The doctor was just trying to get famous, essentially. And now they had, the Lancet lost its credibility, so it lost ethos. But we had to prove this through testing. And this is something that happened over a long period of time where people kept testing and testing and testing because they're like, this is something that we have to really find an answer for. And so logos is something that helps us confirm and assert the tested and oftentimes retested truths to show that they are things that are part of what we do. Now, with those little t truths, we're going to look definitely into pathos. So pathos is very much about, what are the things that you believe in? What are the things you value? How do you respond to the world? So we want to kind of think about each of those ways of, how different people might respond to a different set of circumstances, a different set of stimuli, a different set of criteria or design or modality. So we want to really think about that idea in terms of the way we think of the world, not just our emotions, but the way that we respond to it, is very much about what pathos is. And so, like, when we think about the roots, ethos is about ethics, logos, logic, pathos. The root's a little harder to kind of discern. So when we think of, something that's pathological, we think of anything that has to do with the way people have their ideas and their ways of thinking about the world formed. So when we think of pathos, it's everything to do with our mind. So when we think of something that's pathological, it's something that's a part of our brain construction, our brain chemistry. So that's our emotions and the way we emotionally react to things. That's our feelings. That's both physical and emotional feelings. So we want to kind of consider, when we engage with the physical world, what does that do to our thinking? It also has to do with our experiences and how that shapes our emotional reactions and how those experiences have helped us build our values, so the things that are important to us, our beliefs, so our way of kind of framing the world, and that could be religious beliefs, that could be political beliefs, that could be any number of things that shape our responses. So we want to kind of think about this as all of this is our cognition. It's our ways of thinking. It's physically, it's the way that our neurons have formed in order for us to organize the world. In terms of our kind of mental side of it, it's the sum of everything that we've been through, that we've felt, that we've developed consciously or unconsciously. It's everything that our brain does when we interact with the world. So this also could have to do with our intuition. So it's what are our instincts about responding to what we see and experience. But it also is how we connect with the creator of a text. So it's this set of empathy that we have with the text, how the text is designed. So color, for example, has a lot to do with the way that we are attracted to something. Music plays a part in that. So what do we hear? What kind of music do we listen to that helps us either connect or not connect to something? particular ways of presenting information, so different modalities. Is it electronic? Is it paper? Is it a book? Is it a comic? Is it a TV show? Is it a documentary? All of these different things about modality also help kind of connect to that emotional side with us. I like to bring up the example of Jane McGonigal, who's someone we'll look at a little bit later in the semester. And she had this amazing TED Talk where she's this engaging presenter. She's a professor of gaming technology and gaming theory. And what she does is she has this great engaging talk that talks about, here's all the things we've done with research, here's an emotional thing. But her way of presenting to an audience, like a physical audience she's giving a presentation to, is very different from the way that she writes her books, which are meant to be consumed, but there's a lot more logic to them. So there's less emotion than there was in her presentation. Or magazine articles where she connects it to real life things and she's trying to create empathy with her reader. And there's logic there, but it's not as strong. So we want to kind of think about how pathos can be inserted into any number of different places. And it can be ways that we don't actually see. So part of this is also thinking about something called paralinguistic features. Now this is everything that goes around logic. This is everything that goes around ethos. And so ethos and logos are kind of surrounded by this set of paralinguistic features, which oftentimes fall into pathos, which is, design elements. How does this look? So people are attracted to it because we are attracted to things that we can emotionally connect to. And it's really important to kind of have that in mind as we go along. Now, our last one, when we're thinking about kairos. I liked this particular definition of kairos because I think it kind of encompasses everything that we need to know. So kairos is a perfect, delicate, crucial moment. And it comes at the right time for that crucial action or decision to be made. So this is really important. It's still kind of vague here. And kairos can be one of the hardest of the appeals to kind of figure out because it really is about timing. So having a text come to you at the right time for you to change your mind can be hugely important. That's kind of what we're focusing on for writing Project 1 is what was this text and why did it affect you at that moment? Then we're looking at the rhetorical appeals that are used to kind of help us figure that out. So when we're thinking of kairos, it can have a lot to do with urgency or emergency or need. So what this means is that there's something that has changed. There's something that has been drastically affected and that we have to kind of do something different. So it's this kairotic moment. And so, of course, grumpy cat, I need a grumpy cat on this day. So we need to have that kind of idea of, okay, if we miss a kairotic moment, nothing's going to change. But if we hit a kairotic moment with our text, or if a text hits us at just the right moment, that changes everything. It changes what we do. An example that I've used oftentimes in the past, and this is maybe before some of you were born, is 9/11. That was a kairotic moment. So for years, we had been in a relationship with the Taliban and with Osama bin Laden as kind of, a way to try and kind of change the political atmosphere in the Middle East. And eventually we made an enemy of this person. And so our intelligence community had been spending years trying to get our national government to pay more attention to that this was an actual threat. They were actually planning things. This was happening for years. And it wasn't until 9/11 happened that our government was willing to listen. They had to have something that changed. So that means a particular situation or a moment in time was not going to do we had to have that in order for anything to change or to happen. So all of these years of reporting, all of these years of testimony, all of these years of kind of information not hitting the mark with whoever was receiving it, that moment had to happen for people to realize, yes, we could be attacked in the United States. And so we've had kind of these big moments. We're having several of those big moments right now where we're having to kind of rethink our entire way of being, our entire way of being a society. And so this is a kairotic moment where things are meant to change. There's urgency, emergency, and need in this. So that's why a lot of folks have talked about that this is not just a moment in time, it's a movement. So we had to have a moment in time, and the moment in time was during a pandemic, and the death of we had the death of George Floyd. So we have kind of that moment in time happened. Now what do we have to do? Kairos can also have to do with trends. So what are we seeing people looking at? What is becoming more popular? What is more in the public consciousness? So when we think about what is happening, it's not just about people jumping on the bandwagon, but people embracing something. And so this is a critical time. When we think about critical timing, it means that something has to be done, something has to be addressed, something can no longer be ignored. Or it could be that something has been bubbling back in people's minds or in people's experiences that someone has made a call to action and they're responding. So that means people are seizing the opportunity, and it's the right time for people to listen, to hear, to engage, to act. So what it essentially means then is that we don't want to miss that kairotic moment. We don't want to try and present information that people aren't ready for. So if we're trying to wake people up, we have to figure out what it is that will wake them up. Now, in the video before, they talked very much about ethos, logos, and pathos being this triangle of information. In my own personal kind of teaching philosophy, when I'm talking about the rhetorical appeals, I don't think that we can talk about ethos, logos, and pathos without talking about kairos. Because you can do an amazing job with all three of these and balance them well. And that's the whole point, is every text has features of ethos, logos, pathos, and kairos, even though they might not be completely apparent. So I think we have to also think about how kairos is a part of this balance. So what we want to remember is that, as you know, we think of a Venn diagram as finding the right amount of each of those logical appeals to appeal to where your audience lives. And so you have to think about what that balance might be. They are never going to be equal, so this is a little bit deceiving. So it might be that there's a whole lot of, when we're thinking about a scientific report, there's a whole lot of ethos, there's a whole lot of logos, there's a whole lot of kairos, maybe a little bit of pathos, but not that much. Or it might be something where there's a whole lot more pathos and ethos rather than logos and kairos. So that just means that it changes the dynamic of what kind of information and how you present it. It could be something where it's all about the ethos, where we're trusting someone, where we're believing in someone. There's not as much logic, there's not as much emotion, but it's the right moment in time. So we want to kind of think about these balances in that way.